Hi there, I'm Teacher Nikki, and today we are going to dig into how to teach food in Spanish. Now, anytime I'm teaching a vocabulary lesson or even a grammar lesson in another language to a student who's trying to learn a new language, I have to keep in mind, or I want to keep in mind, the 4 language domains, which are which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So as I'm teaching the vocabulary, I'm going to incorporate those aspects of practicing the language, because a lot of times what happens in school especially is there's not enough of that listening and speaking practice going on. So I definitely make it a point that at the end of every class or in the middle of the lesson, we do some speaking practice with like a turn and talk, or whether it's in a group or even if it's the teacher asking the students and having some practice that way. So let's dig into the lesson right now. So here we are with my Spanish food lesson, and this lesson is on Google Slides and it is in Nearpod. The reason that I absolutely love Nearpod, whether you are a brick and mortar teacher or you're teaching from home or online, Nearpod is amazing because it allows the students to practice the vocabulary that they're learning immediately. You can incorporate it with your notes. And I don't know if you guys have your students take notes. Maybe just call me traditional, but I still think there's value in taking notes with language learning, because when you're writing down those words, that's what helps it stick. And if you're not doing a full immersion program, if they're learning it as a foreign language in a foreign language class, they need to gradually build that vocabulary. And writing those words down is really a helpful way of remembering the words. And not only that, but it helps with learning grammar and with learning punctuation, capitalization. We wonder why our students don't use correct capitalization or punctuation. Well, maybe we should have them practice writing more. With notes, it still is part of that process with learning grammar, learning spelling, all of that. So I know that's a whole other side note, but my lesson does include taking notes, so just keep that in mind. All right. And if you agree, let me know in the comments. If you disagree, well, maybe you have another argument. You can share it too. I'm always open to learn, but in my mind, it's still important. That's how I learned, and I became fluent. Okay, so here we go. We have the food vocabulary. This is the first slide, and I teach about, I think there's 4 to 6 words per section, and then we do activities. So when I just click this little arrow here, it shows me how many slides there are before I have an activity. So I teach the basic words. I teach la comida, el desayuno, el almuerzo, la cena. And then we do these activities where they have to do matching pairs. So we match those up, and just like that. If I go back here, I have to start the activity. I did time this one. They get 45 seconds to do it. You can decide if you want your activity to be timed or not. Just so you guys know, I will be linking the Google Slides that go with this lesson, but the Nearpod slides are not included. You'd have to make those yourself if you do end up getting this lesson and want to use it. So when I click Start Activity, they will see this. And, oops, hang on. Hopefully this isn't picking up my fan. So they'll get timed like this, and on my end I will see how many matches they've made, how many attempts they've made, and it will show me when they finish. It is a little delayed sometimes, but if you're in a classroom in a brick and mortar school where they have iPads or they have computers, they're one-to-one, then it's kind of like, why aren't you using this in your class, you know? It's really useful. And then the next activity is drag and drop. So they'll drag the image, or they'll drag the word to the correct image, just like this. And then I have to move myself there. And then they just click submit. So right here you can't see it, but when the students do it, you would be able to see it. And then for me, I would see, as they're doing each one, I would see what they're doing. So let me give you guys a little preview of that. So it's super easy. They just click in, they join the lesson, and then see, once you put it in there, it shows you can click submit. And then on the teacher side, I'm going to move myself on the other side here. So I would click submit, but here on the teacher side, it shows me what I'm doing, what the student is doing as they're doing it. And if they're not doing anything, you can go and head over or ask them, what's going on? Sometimes it's delayed for kids. So especially with drag and drop, sometimes if they don't have really good internet, it won't load for them. Sometimes this happens with matching pairs too. It usually is okay with fill in the blank. I feel like that one's pretty much, it always loads for people. But yeah, if they have bad internet, then that could be a potential problem that you want to think about, what you're going to do in that situation. So sometimes, for me, since I'm online, I'll use the Zoom chat box, or I'll tell them to study the words that they learned. But if they're not studying, I'll say, okay, in the chat box, let's practice, you know, what's your favorite food, or something along, you know, whatever they just learned. And I might even just say, what is breakfast? How do you say breakfast? ¿Cómo se dice breakfast en español? ¿Cómo se dice dinner en español? And then that's how we practice if it's not loading for them. Okay, now this is where I incorporate listening. So I will tell them to draw a circle around the image, because on Nearpod there is a pencil tool, the text box tool. This is called Draw It. This is the activity that's embedded in, if you go into Google Slides and you add Nearpod as an add-on, and which I have a video about that. So if you've never done that, you can check out that video. I'll link it up in the corner here. So I'll teach you how to do all that if you've never done it. But, okay, so I'll say, dibuja un círculo alrededor de la cena. So they have to listen to the instructions in Spanish and the vocabulary they just learned. So I said, dibuja un círculo alrededor de la cena. Dibuja un círculo alrededor del almuerzo. La comida. El desayuno. And then they can submit that. So that way, so far, we've practiced reading the words, so they have to read when they match them, and they have to listen when I said draw a circle around. So we've done 2 of the 4 domains already. You could say we did writing with the notes, but we haven't really put it in context of anything. So then after teaching those first few words, then we learn drinks, and we go through like the basic drinks. So apple juice, tea, la limonada, el batido. And then we do another round of those same activities. So we have those 3 activities again. And then we learn breakfast, we learn lunch and dinner, and we have those same activities. So after doing those, this is usually day 1 for me. And my classes are pretty short. My classes are 25 minutes. So we get quite a bit done for day 1. If you have a longer class, if it's a 45-minute, an hour-long class, you could probably do this whole presentation if you wanted to just have one day where you're introducing all of the vocabulary. So after I teach them these words, Then they're going to learn how to describe the food. At the end of day 1, though, let me just talk about that a little bit. At the end of day 1, I will do an activity where we'll categorize the food. So they are speaking as well, and I can hear their pronunciation and make sure that they are using the correct words and the correct categories. So I'll categorize it by la comida, like the meals. We'll categorize los lácteos, which are dairy products. And then we will categorize maybe the different meals. So el desayuno, what do you eat for breakfast? El almuerzo, la cena. And I think there's another one maybe I do like la fruta, granos, grains. And then I think that's all the ones I do. So that way they have to look at their list and they have to utilize that vocabulary. They're putting it into context of something by organizing it and thinking about the food. At the end of class, after we do all of that, I might ask them, what do you eat for breakfast, or what do you eat for lunch? So I'll put the question up with a sentence frame. ¿Qué comes para el desayuno? Como blank para el desayuno. So they're seeing that in context as well, and they get to think about it in their real life, and that is what helps them remember the vocabulary too. And I will have them ask another student, so they are practicing asking the question, not just answering it. And since I'm there throughout the whole class, I have small groups, so I'm able to manage them all asking each other. Whereas, if you're in a big group, like 20-some students, it's probably going to be harder to hear every single person. But I feel very lucky and grateful that I get to teach in those small groups, because it does really help being able to guide them in that way. So in any case, you can have them do turn and talk if you're in a big group and kind of walk around the class, listen in, see how they're doing. If you do use devices like where they can record themselves, this is, just for basic practice, but you can there's certain devices you can use where people have the students record themselves and they submit it to the teacher. I can't remember what it's called. It starts with an A. It's not Acuity. It's something else. But I feel like it's something along those lines. It starts with an A, where they submit the recording to the teacher. It just goes straight to your email and you can listen to them practice the language. So that can give you an indication of their speaking abilities too. So the next day, day 2, we're going to get more in depth. I think day 2, I actually start with the last part of the vocabulary, which is la fruta, and they learn some fruits. And then we get into describing feelings with food. So to be hungry, to be thirsty. We talk about how in Spanish we use the verb to have, which is tener. So you're saying to have hunger, to have thirst. So I always tell the students in Spanish 1 that you don't always translate things literally. That's not how it works, because you want to use the best interpretation. What would we say in English that is equivalent to what they're saying in another language, or vice versa? So I try to get them to wrap their heads around the fact that you're not going to always translate things word for word. That's not how it works when you're translating or interpreting a language. You have to use the best interpretation or the best translation for it to make sense. So that's what makes a good translator, and that's a skill too. If they do want to become fluent, that's an important skill for them to know. So once we learn these phrases, this gives us a lot more room for speaking and writing practice. And we also review gustar. With this unit, this is my 3rd unit, so we have already learned gustar, so that's review for my class. And then we learn some adjectives, and we talk about how these could be changed to masculine and feminine, which again, that would be review too, based on the fact that I have taught that grammar to them already. And then we're going to learn in this unit, we'll also be doing the grammar I'll also be teaching them how to conjugate ER and IR verbs in the present tense, regular ER and IR verbs. So compartir and vender are kind of like that. Those are the two that we're going to utilize when we learn how to conjugate ER and IR verbs. And then we do some matching pairs. And we learn some more adjectives. Oh, I do another. Oh no, this one's not a listening activity. I think that's just a photo. Okay, and then we learn these other words and phrases. And then I utilize these to do more speaking and listening practice. So here, I ask them, what food is nutritious? What food is flavorful? What food is horrible, in their opinion? And then they have to choose a few things and say blank, blank, y blank son nutritivos or nutritivas. So this is a more, not advanced sentence, but in a way it is, because they have to think about a couple things. Are they going to choose masculine plural, feminine plural with the adjectives? They're using the verb ser. They have to combine several nouns with the word and. So there's some richness to the sentence, if you want to say it that way. So we do this speaking practice. We also talk about, what do you like to eat? And some of these I'll have them practice with writing. I might even have them write it first, especially for beginners. They feel much more confident if they get to write out their sentence first and then practice speaking. Whereas if you are just jumping right into speaking, they might not even be able to think of how to organize that sentence. So this is helping them see the sentence structure and the grammar and how that all works before jumping into just speaking. And it is important to have these sentence frames. Sometimes people think, well, you're just giving them the answer. But the more they see these sentence frames, the more that's going to sink in and become natural to the students. And then they're seeing two verbs combined here. I like to eat and how that looks. And, these are just a few different options, but they're also seeing the structure of the question. And so we can write this answer first, then have them ask each other. So we'll also practice ¿Qué te gusta beber? And that is the majority of how I teach food in Spanish. Once we get through this lesson, then we shift into the grammar with teaching ER, IR verbs, regular ER, IR verbs, which can lead to more writing and speaking practice as well. So that is a quick overview of how I teach food in Spanish. Thanks so much for staying till the end. Thank you so much for staying until the end. If you are still here, make sure you go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and comment. That really helps this video reach other people. And if you liked this lesson, make sure you grab it. You can use this. I have it in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. Just grab the link in the description box, and this is yours. I do want to emphasize, however, that the Nearpod aspect of the lesson, where they do activities and things like that, is not included in the product, because with Nearpod you cannot copy the materials to somebody else. So do keep in mind that you would just be getting the slides, and if you want to add the Nearpod activities, you would have to do that yourself with your own Nearpod account. All right, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Adios.